Hey kids, it's your friendly neighborhood clown, Mr. Pip. A cacophony of terrified shrieks erupted across the stage as mortified little kids ran around in a panicked frenzy. That's how we were chosen. Those of us who stayed calm and composed were selected as child actors for Little Annie's Amazing Adventure. God, how I wish I would have joined those horrified children all those years ago. Mr. Pip, the protagonist's sidekick, wasn't inherently scary on his own. Not in my opinion, at least. He was your stereotypical clown. Red nose, polka dot jumpsuit, big floppy shoes, the works. I was never afraid of clowns. Yet, something about Mr. Pip always felt off. As if he was hiding something just below the surface of that caked-on face paint. Something dark and twisted that none of us were meant to see. On the first day of shooting, I found myself sitting crisscross applesauce on a stage in a circle of 4 other children. The director wore a warm smile as he made his way to each of us. You will play George. You will play Alice. And you... He smirked, looming over me. You will be the star of the show. Say hello to Annie, everyone. I smiled wide, my cheeks burning red with a mixture of shock and excitement. Whereas other kids might have been reluctant to play the lead role, I reveled in it. I craved attention as a child, so I was elated when all my peers began clapping for me. Little did I know, that elation would quickly devolve into dread. Nothing seemed awry for the first few sessions. It was tough to have to memorize lines at 6 years old, but I managed somehow. That was the main focus for the first couple of days. After that was when things started to get strange. When you picture a set for a children's show, what comes to mind? A huge stage filled to the brim with props? Maybe a green screen for film editing? Perhaps a classroom or a playground? Well, the set of Little Annie's Amazing Adventure had none of those. No, all we had was a big red door. That was where the magic happened. I vividly remember the first time I crossed through it. All right, boys and girls, Mr. Pip is going to show you where he lives. You have to promise to be on your best behavior. Okay? The lot of us fervently shook our heads in acceptance. Say it out loud so Mr. Pip knows you mean it. We promise, we screamed, our voices jumbling together incoherently. Alrighty then, follow me. Mr. Pip knocked 3 times. Then he opened the door, and we all filed through inside, one by one. I will never forget what lay within. Beyond the threshold was a whimsical world filled with wacky creatures beyond belief. A red, 6-legged camel lazily grazed purple, swaying grass. Bluebirds floated aimlessly through a milky yellow sky, their beaks filled with rows of pristine, white teeth. We even watched a 4-eyed panda take a dip in a shimmering green river. I was awestruck. As a child, I found the whole scene far less strange than I should have. Now, I think it's downright horrifying. Once we were finished gawking at our surroundings, Mr. Pip turned to us, a wide grin plastered across his face. "Come to the waterfall, kids. That's where we're filming today. Oh, and one more thing. If any of you utter so much as a single word about this place, especially to your parents, then Mr. Pip will slit your little throats," he said, his smile never wavering. A tense silence permeated the atmosphere. That moment will always stick out in my memory. It was the first time that I had felt pure, genuine fear. I no longer saw Mr. Pip as some lovable, zany children's character. No, in my mind, he was a real-life monster. "What are you waiting for? This way!" the clown shouted, motioning for us to follow. We snapped out of our collective trance and diligently tagged along. As we trudged through the purple grass, I felt a slight tug on my sleeve. I turned to find a boy with curly hair and suspenders staring back at me. He was the one slated to play the role of George. "Hi, I'm Liam. I was just wondering, does Mr. Pip scare you?" he whispered, glancing anxiously between me and our leader. "I'm Hannah," I replied. "Yes, he scares me a lot." "It's gonna be okay. I'll be brave for you," Liam said, his cheeks blossoming with color. I nodded in response, a smile tugging at the corner of my lips. I'd made my first friend on set. Liam's presence made me feel slightly more at ease. "Okay, kids, here we are," Mr. Pip yelled upon our arrival. Neon green water cascaded down behind him, closely resembling a river of toxic waste. I don't want to know what kind of monstrosities lurked in those luminescent depths. Each of us glanced around before the girl playing Alice broke the silence. Mr. Pip?" she timidly asked, awaiting his approval to continue. "Yes, Alice," he replied, an eyebrow raised expectantly. "Where are the cameras? And where is the director?" I furrowed my brows. She was right. I had never once seen a film crew anywhere in the vicinity. "Oh, silly girl. There's cameras all around you. They're hidden very well, so no one will find them. Rest assured, my dear child. The director is watching." I did not feel reassured in the slightest. In fact, I felt a chill run down my spine at his words. The director was watching us? Why wasn't he directing? I was starting to get a bad feeling about the entire thing, from Mr. Pip's open threat to the absence of any visible recording equipment. Even as a child, I knew that something was very wrong. Surprisingly, the remainder of the shoot went off without a hitch. We rehearsed our lines, acted out our parts, and once we were finished, Mr. Pip led us back to the red door. I remember thinking that it looked out of place, Just a solitary door, standing in the middle of a clearing. It was far less strange than the scenery surrounding it, but odd in its own right. "Good job today, everyone," Mr. Pip grinned as he shut the door behind us. "Don't forget, if you tell your parents about any of this, I'll kill ya." The way he said that made me shudder. His tone was sickly sweet. The consequences of disobeying his order were crystal clear. Yet, they were sugar-coated in a cheery timbre. We all nodded in unison. "All right, kids. For all your hard work, you get a popsicle. Go pick one from the table over there." True to his word, 5 multicolored popsicles sat on a folding table before us. Being 6 years old, I bolted for the table, nearly tripping over my own feet in my rush to snag my frozen treat. And that's the last thing I remember from that day. Come to think of it, every shoot ended like that. I would take a lick from my coveted popsicle, only for my memory to go blank until the next day. It took me way too long to realize what true purpose our frozen rewards served. Things went smoothly for a while after that. We had shot several episodes worth of content, with no further threats to our lives or any indication that Mr. Pip had any ulterior motives. That is, until someone slipped up. "Okay, kiddos, who's ready to have a wonderful day?" An eruption of gleeful confirmations roared from our little mouths. "I am." "Me too." "Mr. Pip, I can't wait." The irony of those words. Little did I know, that would be one of the most traumatic days of my entire life. I eagerly rushed over to the red door, ready to embark on a new journey. "I'll open it today, Mr. Pip," I said, yanking on the handle. The door flew open, only to reveal a brick wall. "Annie, you forgot to knock. Silly goose. Try again." Mr. Pip beamed, looking behind me like a shadow. "Oh, yeah. Oops." I closed the door, knocked 3 times, then flung it open. Mr. Pip was right. That time when the door flew open, I was met with the cartoonish world that I had come to adore so much. Very good. Follow me now, children. Mr. Pip has somewhere special to take you." I nearly leapt out of my shoes with excitement. Somewhere special? What could be better than the dreamland we had already been privy to? I was itching to find out. As we walked down a red brick path, I felt that familiar tug on my sleeve. I turned to find Liam shyly pulling at my shirt. "Hannah, I think something bad is going to happen. Can we stay together for today?" My enthusiasm began to wane. It suddenly dawned on me that special didn't necessarily equal good. I returned Liam's anxious gaze and nodded my head, slowing my pace to match his. "Yeah, I would like that." We soon found ourselves standing at the edge of a ravine. Mr. Pip animatedly opened his arms and gestured toward the giant crevice. "We're here, everyone. Isn't it magnificent?" I pursed my lips, glancing at the other kids. They all looked equally as confused.
Michael, come here. Mr. Pip has something to show you.
The sandy-haired boy tasked with playing Michael emerged from the group, apprehensively joining Mr. Pip at the edge. The moment he was within arm's reach, the clown's demeanor shifted. He grabbed our fellow actor's wrist, violently pulling him forward.
Pay attention, kids. This is what happens when you disobey Mr. Pip. Michael here told his parents about our little secret. Isn't that right, Michael?
The boy began to wail, his cries sending a wave of terror pulsing through my chest.
Yes, I'm sorry, Mr. Pip. I won't do it again. I promise. Mr. Pip knows you won't do it again.
He grinned, hovering the terrified child over the edge.
Because Mr. Pip won't give you the chance. No, please.
Mr. Pip released his grasp on the child's wrist. For a split second, I could see the fear behind that boy's eyes as he fell. And then, he disappeared from view.
Come here, everyone. Come look.
Mr. Pip shouted, waving us over. I rushed to the edge, praying that somehow our castmate would be okay, that by some stroke of luck, the fall wouldn't be that great. But my prayers fell on deaf ears. It was at least a 60-foot drop. At the bottom of the ravine, the boy's body lay mangled and broken, blood pooling around his motionless form.
Keep looking, kids. This is the best part.
Mr. Pip giggled, clapping his gloved hands together. We watched in sheer horror as beasts of all kinds surrounded the child's lifeless body, sinking their jagged teeth into his corpse. I couldn't watch any longer. My stomach churned, and I was helpless to stop the cheese pizza I'd had from lunch from spewing all over the grass. With watery eyes, I glanced up at Mr. Pip. He was loving every second of it.
Do you children remember the first day of filming? When Mr. Pip said there were hidden cameras?
The lunatic asked, his gaze glued to the twisted scene before him. He received no response.
Well, Mr. Pip never said the cameras were just in the studio.
I staggered backward, falling into another kid's arms. It was Liam.
Don't worry, I won't let him get you,
he whispered into my ear. I was in complete shock, yet his words offered me a tiny sliver of solace. I wish I could say that was the last time we visited the ravine, that no one else had to die at the hands of that evil clown. But, unfortunately, I can't. One by one, my castmates cracked. Next was the girl who played Alice. Then, the boy casted as Tim. I suddenly realized that Liam and I were the only ones left. I don't know how they explained the deaths to the parents. Maybe they were told that the children had run away. Maybe they were informed that there had been an accident while shooting. Or the thought that gives me chills, even to this day. maybe they were paid to keep their mouths shut. Needless to say, I was beginning to dread going to film every day. Fortunately, I would only have to endure for a little longer. Unfortunately, I will never recover from the event that killed my film career. I remember my final stint on set like it was yesterday. I vehemently begged my mother not to take me, to no avail. The way she saw it, I was a star, and nothing would stop me from achieving the fame I deserved. I was trembling when Mum dropped me off. She didn't normally leave me alone if there were no adults present, but on the way to the studio, Mum had received a call from my grandmother. Grandpa had fallen down the stairs again. He was in stable condition, but looking back, I think she wanted to kill two birds with one stone. Mum wanted to ensure that I was there to film, while visiting Grandpa alone, in case his injuries were worse than Grandma let on. I don't blame her. Not anymore. But that still doesn't change what happened. Once the door clicked shut behind my mother, I found myself standing in an empty auditorium. I cautiously claimed a seat in the front row and stared up at the stage. It was devoid of any props, just as it had been on my first day. All except for the red door. It loomed ominously above me, radiating a sinister aura. I froze. It was faint, but I could have sworn that for a moment I heard a voice emanating from behind that eerie wooden frame. Annie. My legs shook as I hesitantly made my way up the steps. Every synapse in my brain was screaming at me to turn back, to ignore the damned thing and call my mother to come get me. But I couldn't. I just had to know. I pressed my ear against the hard wood, straining my ears for any indication of sound. Annie. There it was again. I knew for a fact that I had heard a muffled voice calling for me from beyond the threshold. My heart slammed against my little chest like a jackhammer. A nauseating cocktail of fear and curiosity ate away at me. I couldn't stop myself. Before I knew what I was doing, I extended my fist to the door and lightly knocked 3 times. The door swung inward of its own volition. The same wacky cartoon world that I had grown accustomed to stood before me, as always. Only this time, it was different. It looked grey and gloomy, like the embodiment of depression. No birds flew in the sky. No herbivores grazed the purple grass. No aquatic creatures floundered in the river. Even so, I was powerless to prevent my legs from moving forward. The door slammed shut the moment I stepped through it. I gulped, taking deep breaths like Mum had taught me to do when I was anxious. That helped a little. I glanced around, trying to pinpoint where the voice was coming from. Annie, over here. I shuddered. The call seemed to drift from a cluster of bright yellow boulders to my right. I shuffled over to it, blood pounding in my ears. Each step felt heavy, like I was underwater. I knew that I shouldn't look, but some invisible force continued to propel me forward. once I finally rounded the corner, I was met with a horrifying sight. Mr. Pip and Liam were standing behind the rocks. The demented clown held my friend in the air by his neck. Liam fruitlessly clawed at Mr. Pip's stained white gloves, desperately trying to free himself. I gasped, struggling to comprehend what I was seeing. Mr. Pip looked wrong. Where his red wig once sat, bright scraggly hairs dotted his scalp in ugly, uneven patches. His polka-dotted jumpsuit was torn intermittently, and I could make out deep lacerations visible underneath the fabric. His face paint was cracked and dried out, like an arid desert landscape. Black eyeliner trailed down his cheeks like rivers of dark tears. And those teeth, rows upon rows of yellow, razor-sharp teeth, jutted from his lips like kitchen knives. At that moment, I understood Mr. Pip to be the apotheosis of evil. "But please, put him down," I squeaked, mustering every ounce of courage I had left.
"Mr. Pip is sorry, Annie. You see, Liam did a bad thing. He told the police about Mr. Pip, and naughty boys need to be punished."
To my absolute horror, Mr. Pip began to cackle as he removed a dirty glove from his hand. He held a serrated claw to Liam's quivering throat, and momentarily shifted his gaze to me.
"Now's your chance, Annie. Say goodbye to George."
"No." My scream made no difference. Mr. Pip stabbed the elongated digit deep into Liam's throat, brutally sliding it across. Dark, viscous liquid began gushing from Liam's neck. I could see the light fading from his eyes. With one last breath, he whispered, "Run." That was the kick that I needed. Adrenaline crashed through my system like a tidal wave. I bolted for the door as Mr. Pip's demented laughs boomed into the desolate atmosphere. I never looked back. My life depended on it. Once I reached the door, I flung it open and sprawled out onto the stage. I instantly slammed the wretched thing shut. Then, I did something that may have saved my life. I opened the door without knocking, leaving an empty entrance leading to a brick wall. I couldn't take it after that. I broke down and cried for what must have been hours. By the time Mum rushed into the auditorium, I was curled into the fetal position, muttering Liam's name over and over again. I was inconsolable for a long time afterward. I've tried speaking to my friends and family about what I experienced on the set of Little Annie's Amazing Adventure. No matter how passionate I am, no one believes me. According to them, the show never existed, and apparently neither did the network set to run the program. But I know it was real. Those children, that whimsical, Seuss-esque world, Mr. Pip, they did exist. And recently, I was not so subtly reminded of that fact. You see, I finally moved out of my childhood home and into a cozy little apartment. My old room didn't have a closet, but this one does. And I swear, ever since I've moved in, I have been hearing 3 soft knocks drifting from inside.
Hello, Sinister listeners. If you've enjoyed this story, then you'll find all the author's information in the description below. For more content, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to succumb to the sinister.